Now, this is Today on eNCA DSTV channel 403. A very good afternoon and welcome. My name is William, last name Lahong. The country has for weeks been gripped by the prison escape saga of Thabo Bester that will now unfold in our course. In fact, Bester, a convicted rapist and murderer, faked his own death and seemingly walked out of prison with great assistance. Months in hiding and on the run, he was finally deported, with the woman now also the focus of this drama, Dr. Nandipha Magudumane. Now, the pair was flown into the country from Tanzania in the early hours of Thursday morning. But how did we get here? And what happens now? To unpack this for us, we are joined by the team of incredible reporters here at eNCA. They've spent hours putting the puzzle pieces together. Slindelo Masekane, Muloko Muloto, Aviram Tila, and Manqoba Mkhunu. On your screen, you will see visuals of the dramatic return of Thabo Bester and Nandipha Magudumane to South Africa in the early hours of Thursday morning. Slindelo, let me start with you alongside Umuloko Muloto. You were at the Lansera airport as that happened. Sli, take us through that commotion and what happened.
You know, William, I would actually want to start and take our viewers back to how we actually got to the scenes that we saw transpiring at the Lansera International Airport. Now, you would remember that on the 3rd of May 2022, we were told by the Department of Correctional Services that they had received a notice that Thabo Bester had died, apparently in a fire at the Mangaung Correctional Center or facility, which is, of course, run by G4S Security. It's a privately run prison housing some of the most dangerous criminals in our society. Now, investigations then got underway in terms of the the issues around how the fire took place, etc. But Ground Up then got a tip-off from Justice Cameron, who then initiated some investigative journalism around the fire and the possibility that in fact that fire was simply a ruse in order to get Thabo Bester out of prison. Now, since then, of course, we have seen that the Department of Correctional Services finally admitting or releasing an official statement last month confirming that Thabo Bester had escaped from the Mangaung prison and that he was on the run. We then started seeing investigations around people who were close to Thabo Bester, and it seems as though Dr. Nandipha Magudumane's name was consistently coming up. And in fact, we then found out that after the fire had taken place, she presented herself to authorities as Bester's customary wife, wanting to take possession of the body that was planted in his cell. Subsequent to that, we've seen police investigations into the lifestyle in which Dr. Magudumane lived in Hyde Park, subsequently finding out that for the past 10 months, Thabo Bester was living a lavish lifestyle in hiding in Hyde Park in a 12 million rand mansion. And then you would remember a photo of Bester and Dr. Nandipha that was taken at a retail store, which essentially then had authorities starting to piece together this elaborate escape. Now, how we got to Lansera is that track and tracing teams from the private security services that had partnered with SAPS had began to track Dr. Nandipha and Bester's movements, freezing accounts all the way into Tanzania, Arusha, where they were arrested last week by Tanzanian authorities. The South African authorities were then alerted of the arrest, and a delegation was then sent to Tanzania to secure the return, or should I say the deportation, of Dr. Nandipha as well as Thabo Bester Bester from Tanzania. They did have a Mozambican accomplice who at this stage we believe is going to actually go through the court systems of Tanzania, because that particular accomplice was also in the country illegally. Now, what we saw then unfolding at Lanseria International Airport was in the wee hours of Thursday morning. Wednesday afternoon, our sources had begun to inform us that they were getting word that authorities were in the process of returning Bester as well as Dr. Nandipa, and at that point it was still very much unclear as to when they were going to arrive. But what we do know was that a chartered plane was going to take off from Lanseria Airport at around 8 p.m. on Wednesday, land in Tanzania, and then straight after make its way back to South Africa. So at around 3 a.m. in the morning, after Muluko Moloto and I basically staked out the international airport, at around 2:30, we started seeing security officials, SAPS, starting to secure the airport for that particular arrival. Just after 3:30 in the morning, we started then seeing visuals, in fact, of that chartered plane heading into the runway from the south. And at that moment, we understood that Dr. Nandipa and Bester were in that flight. When it landed, it was a flurry of activity in terms of moving them from Lanseria to the Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Services Center in Pretoria. And I can tell you they were under heavy police guard. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a visual of Bester as he was leaving the chartered plane, but we did manage to catch Dr. Nandipa, who was whisked away in a private vehicle. And from what we understand, as soon as they left that airport, she was then transported, William, to the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, which is where I am, where she made her first appearance on Thursday.
And I'm going to come to you now, Moloko. And just before I do that, I mean, we are also just hearing on the social media, Slee, there's a voice note doing the round. I don't know how permissible this will be in court, where it sounds like Thabo Bester was having a really heated argument with Dr. Nandipa Magudumane, even threatening her life. Have you heard this voice note? Is there any validity to its contents? Like, is it real?
So we're still trying to confirm exactly the authenticity of that particular voice note. We understand it does seem to be a phone call that was made from the Mangaung Correctional Center to Dr. Nandipa, but these are all issues that we still need to confirm. We do hear, of course, in that voice note the aggressiveness in which Bester is allegedly addressing Dr. Nandipa in. There has been speculation around whether she has been an accomplice, whether she's a victim, and exactly what her role has been throughout this particular saga, whether she was, essentially participating willingly or was she being forced. But I think those are all details that will certainly come out here in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where much of what we're going to see unfolding will be taking place here. You would also have noticed in the Sunday papers today how we are getting even more information about the kind of lifestyle that Bester was living inside prison. It seems he spent more time outside of prison than he did inside. We're being told that he spent nights at lavish hotels and B&Bs in Bloemfontein as well as in KwaZulu-Natal, where he would essentially check out of prison and check into a B&B or a hotel for a weekend, and then just essentially check back into prison. So those are all details that we will be unpacking for our viewers throughout the week, because it does seem as though that this escape was certainly not planned in a matter of weeks or months. This took a lot of planning and a lot of people who had to be involved in high-ranking positions. Already we're seeing at least 4 arrests, including Dr. Nandipa and her father, a technician that was running the CCTV cameras in the section in which Bester was was put in, as well as a G4S former employee who we understand was fired over this particular incident. So there's still much more that we're still going to delve into in terms of the bodies that Dr. Nandipha was claiming from mortuaries. What was she doing with these bodies? And what exactly was the motive in terms of the schemes they were running? It seems they were running a number of Ponzi schemes, and we've seen those videos of Bester addressing people at events in as far as New York, just to show you how elaborate this particular relationship between the two has been. So at this point, everything in terms of police investigations will be revealed through these court proceedings that we'll see, which will continue, of course, from tomorrow.
Thank you for that, Slim. Look, let me come to you now. I mean, you spent some time at the airport and then moved to the Kgosi Mampuru prison, where Thabo Bester was taken. Take us through what unfolded there and what were you told at the prison as they awaited Bester's arrival?
That's very true, William. Well, I left immediately after that assault Falcon 900B that had been chartered to fly the pair from Tanzania back on South African soil. Immediately when it landed, I then left the Lanseria International Airport, and on my way down, I was trying to observe, trying to check if there was any activity. One would have thought that you would see perhaps the Metro Police, the South African police manning the road, considering the fact that we already heard that they would be transported from Lanseria International Airport via the N14 to Pretoria, towards specifically to the Kgosi Mampuru prison. And of course, that happened. However, they were aware already, the authorities, that this story has already attracted so much media attention. And they knew, obviously, because we had to camp in front of the main gate leading into the prison. So they really did not even bother us. I mean, the officials who are manning the main gate there. And that convoy that was transporting them was had a police chopper flying over them all the way from Lanseria International Airport until the Kgosi Mampuru prison. And they really played us, I must say. They utilized another gate where there was no media presence at all. And suddenly we saw those very convoys driving out of the Kgosi Mampuru prison. So the two, as they walked or they were transported into the prison, they managed to avoid or to evade media attention. Now, immediately, of course, Dr. Nandipha was transported to Bloemfontein immediately, and Thabo Bester, we know that he remained at the Kgosi Mampuru prison, although he later was transported to Bloemfontein, where he also made his first appearance a day after Dr. Nandipha made her first appearance. And of course, we saw South Africans really reacting to this, because firstly, many of them did not even believe that that is the actual Thabo Bester, the man who had escaped or had walked out of the Mangaung prison. They believed that, look, it's possible that the authorities might have managed to get someone else. And even Dr. Nandi, of course, people were even trying to, you could get some people being sympathetic to her, others saying that, look, she's been a key player in this whole thing. And a lot of other prominent people, public figures, even distancing themselves, people who at some point were very close to Dr. Nandipha herself. And of course, at this point in time, we're expecting that when she appears in court tomorrow, she will be appearing alongside other accused, including her father. And as you can see, William, I am standing actually in Kroonstad. This is a town about 200 kilometers away from Bloemfontein. This is the same correctional services that previously Winnie Madikizela Mandela, when she was incarcerated, she spent time here. And other people such as Biza Sefularo Makheta, whom this particular prison is named after. In 1985, he was also incarcerated here. So I understand that in Bloemfontein, there is no correctional services facility that can house females. This is why she has had to come here. And this also could mean that the authorities certainly do not trust that very same prison where Thabo Bester escaped, which is run by a private company in Mangaung, Bloemfontein. This is why Thabo Bester himself is being kept at Hoshimampuru prison in Pretoria. And upon our arrival here in Kroonstad, we tried really to go into this particular prison, obviously not to go inside the building itself. And the gentlemen that you see here, really, they are keeping a close eye. They do not want any car that looks suspicious to come anywhere near this premises. And it looks like a highly fortified prison. I mean, just by my own observation, if you have to escape, that is if you are going to escape, you will need to pass at least 2 fences that are electrified, and it doesn't look like there's anyone who can easily just jump this particular fortified fences. It will certainly happen, if it were to happen, through the assistance of officials. We have heard how Thabo Bester walked out. We also had a professor of criminology, Professor Kolofelo Rakubu, on eNCA saying that we should really stop saying Thabo Bester escaped from Mangaung. It was impossible for him to escape. He walked away. He was made to leave that particular facility. The same, William, with one Mr. Houdini, Ananias Mate, who sometime in 2008 managed to leave or to escape the Hoshimampuru prison. Initially, we were told that he utilized a petroleum jelly, applied it on his body, and he escaped through a very small window. But later, allegations emerged that actually he was assisted by officials that he bribed. So that goes to show that anything is possible. But at this point in time, obviously the securities, South Africa will have to keep a close eye on this too, to make sure that they don't get to be embarrassed again.
And obviously, Moloko, this now opens up a whole lot of questions, and I think it brings scrutiny to that particular prison, because there's a book by Ruth Hopkins, and it's titled The Misery Merchants, right? Life and Death in a Private South African Prison. And in there, she details how G4S, who is a private company looking after this facility, has been involved in so many shady things that have gone on in that prison. We're talking about gangs, we're talking about prison warders and prisoners themselves who are involved in all sorts of illicit things that she names in the book. And I imagine it would have been impossible, as you say, for Thabo Bester to break out of this prison without any form of assistance.
So in addition to that, William, in 2013, the former Minister of Correctional Services, Mr. Sbundebele, actually was before Parliament, and he said in his own words that privatization of the correctional services has actually failed in South Africa. You would recall that in our country there are 2 correctional services facilities that are being run by private players. The one in Mangaung, the one where Thabo Bester walked from, and there's another one in Louis Trichardt or Makado in the province of Limpopo in Kutamasin Tumule. So these are the only 2 correctional services that are being run through a private-public partnership that was entered into by the private or the investors with the government. Obviously, government is spending multi-billions of rand to pay these companies that are privately guarding those. So the former Minister of Correctional Services, as he was before Parliament, Sbundebele, he acknowledged that actually this particular privatization process has failed in South Africa. That was 10 years ago. Not much has happened. We have seen as well how parliamentarians have been trying to work very hard, and I suppose this doesn't happen often. I suppose that South Africans, as they were listening to them, asking those very difficult questions over the past days, wanting answers, really questioning why this has happened. They should have done the same, one would argue, 10 years back. Not much has happened. Government continued to pay billions of rand. Of course, we are hearing government saying that this contract is coming to an end in 2016 and there are no intentions to renew it. But as matters stand, the media has certainly been spotlighting these issues. These are not new issues, and Thabo Bester's escape was certainly not the first. There had been similar escapes that have happened, and all indications are that at all times, officials who are working in those particular correctional services are assisting this particular escapees. And we had as well the head of the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services, retired Judge Edwin Cameron, as he was also before Parliament in the past days. He is the one who says he compiled that report, and when he handed it over to the police, indicating that actually the person who burned in that correctional facility in Mangaung is not Thabo Bester. And according to him, once he became frustrated, once there was no movement, he decided to leak that information to Ground Up, the one that broke the story. He leaked it to the media, and some people will say it was unethical for him as a judge to do that, but others are saying he assisted because today we are here. And that goes to show at the frustration. Judge Cameron saying that he doesn't believe that the escape of Thabo Bester at Mangaung Correctional Services happened only with the assistance of the operational personnel. He believes that there are many other people, both inside and outside, who assisted Thabo Bester to escape in Mangaung prison.
And of course, we are going to look into the identity of Thabo Bester through documentation from Home Affairs. And we'll chat to Aviwe Mdila in a moment. This is the Thabo Bester Focus here on Today on eNCA. Stick around, there's more next.